Right, here we go. Here's the business end of the engine. These, when they're done properly, are absolutely lovely. This hasn't been done properly. All this here, for a start, all around here should be kind of like a chromey finish, bit like this, and all these where the spark plugs go, and all this around here, but someone's just been lazy, painted the whole lot, made a bad job of the paint job, and then all the letters are supposed to be coloured. Obviously they've coloured this one in red, which technically if the cover was red it should be red. It just depends, there's all different colours that came on some cosses, but I'm going to put this one back to the proper, how it is properly supposed to be done. It's going to be blue. So what we need to do now is, I'm not going to be able to film this next part, but I'm going to be sending this away to get blasted. Once it comes back, I'm going to paint it. I'm going to make it look really nice and shiny like that is there. So once it's back, we'll crack on with this. Now, what a difference a couple of hours makes. As we can see, this is been completely stripped. It was acid dipped. Wasn't sandblasted, because obviously I said sandblasted, but sandblasting is it's too harsh, it'll hit it too much. And all I've been basically doing, as you can see, this part here, which I was explaining before, should be kept polished. Now all I've done is I've polished it with 1200 wet and dry sandpaper and 3000 sandpaper. Now what I happen to have, to make my life easier, I have a DA sander here, and I've special 3000 sandpaper on it, so you have to use it wet and dry. And basically, as simple as just did that, and obviously to get that shine. What I've got to do now, I can't paint this tonight because it's too cold and it won't give me a nice finish. But there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can either paint all over it and try and sand that down again to get the nice polished finish. Now, I'm not going to do that because the paint I'm using is really, really thick, and it's going to be a lot harder for me. Now, if you've got a special machine, if you have special machines like the engine builders do when they're polishing heads and stuff, then you can get away with it, but I don't. So what I'm going to do, it's going to be a bit tricky and a bit harder to do, but it shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to basically get masking tape and masking tape that up with a very, very sharp knife, cut out all these individually, and then basically paint over it. That's the way I'm going to do it. I'll show you that, and I'll show you me painting it. But we're going to get an idea of just how shiny that is now. It's come up really nice. Might not be able to see it on camera, but it has. So when I get this painted over the next few days, get the video up and see before and after. Right, we're back on this now again. It's been a few days for me, but obviously a few seconds for you. This is the coswoth head. Now I'm just going to run quickly through basically what I did, because I didn't really run through it very good last time. We got this acid dip to strip all the paint off, and what we've done is with 1200 sandpaper and then 3000 sandpaper, wet and dry. You saw what I did with the DA. I only spent a couple of minutes on it, and as you can see, we've got this really nice shine now. Now I do have to polish it afterwards, but if I polish it now, the paint's not going to stick. So we do need to do one more stage, but we'll do that stage after it's actually sprayed. What I'm using to spray it, metal prep. This is really good stuff for rust, for all sorts of stuff. It's good for aluminium, metal, all sorts of stuff. But basically what I'm using it for, because I've got the PRO15 enamel paint, I'm just using this because it's designed with it, just in case if I use anything else, I don't want a reaction. So that's why I'm using this. Basically what we need to do, we need to X-prime this now to make sure the paint sticks. It's enamel paint, so we don't need to undercoat it, which is good. We just need to paint the paint directly onto it. Before we do that, we need to make sure the paint's going to stick. So this is basically etching primer. Now what I've got to do is I've got to spray the etching primer on, but I've got to be careful of my polished surface. So as soon as I spray it on, I'm going to wipe it off my polished surface and let it basically sit onto everything else. Now it's best with this stuff if you heat it up, get it nice and hot. What I've actually done is, to make my life easier, I've just boiled the kettle and I've put it in this container, and I've just dropped this stuff down, and as you can see it's nice and warm, which will just, it adheres better. All I'm going to do is very simple, just spray it all over, just as simple as that. What you've got to be careful of, you have to keep this wet now for 20 minutes. It is a bit frustrating and it can be a bit annoying, but, and as you can see on the polished parts, I'm just going to wipe it off just with a rag, very simple. Well, not a rag, but a piece of tissue, should I say. Just so it doesn't discolour the shiny parts. What you've also got to be careful of is any bubbles you see or anything like that. If you do see any bubbles on it, just give it a brush with the brush just to smooth it out, because that will cause you problems further on down the line. So any bubbles, any runs, or anything you see like that, just basically brush them off. Keep this stuff nice and smooth on it. I'm going to have to keep this wet now for half an hour. So every time it's going to dry, I'm just going to lightly spray it on again for half an hour. If you've got heavy rust problems, it does suggest you do it a lot more. But there's no rust on this. I'm just basically keying this. So for half an hour, I'm going to keep spraying and wiping this. Once I've done that, I'll turn the camera back on and we'll do the next stages. Right, now we are ready. So I've kept it wet for 30 minutes, spraying that stuff on. I kept wiping my polished surface where I don't want it to stick. And I've rinsed it completely off with water, and it's now completely dry. That's the key. You have to rinse it off and you have to make sure it's dry. One thing I forgot to say is before you put this stuff in, make sure this is completely full of grease and everything's completely off. Now what I need to do is I need to mask up the areas I'm not spraying. Now there is a couple of ways you can do this. You can either completely spray the whole lot, sand it down the areas you don't want. The problem with that is it's very time consuming and you can damage the paint if you hit it, so I'm not going to do that. Another way is to completely spray it and get it machined and get all this air again, but again, I haven't got the machine to do that. I'm not going to do it that way. Another way you can maybe do it is spray it and wipe it every single time you spray it, but again, it is just a lot of hassle. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to mask it up. Now this will be a bit time consuming, but I think it's the best way. I'm going to put masking tape on it, and I'm going to cut out basically the letters and cut out where I need the paint to go through. So, like I said, it will be a bit time consuming, but didn't do that long enough. Make sure it's long enough this time. Down, and this is where you need to make sure it's nice and dry as well, because obviously that will help. So just very quickly get it all down. Now just take your time with this, because the better you get this, the better your paint job will be at the end. Now with this paint I'm putting on, you can actually brush it on, but the problem is with brushing it on something like this, because we've got a lot of surfaces around it like that, as you come with the brush it tends to take the paint off and it all can kind of settle in there and you can get a load of runs. Now again, you could do it if you're really, really careful, but I'm going to spray it because I have all the spray guns and stuff, I might as well. Right, now what I've got to do. Now I'm not going to film all this because it's going to take me a long time, but basically with a brand new sharp knife I'm going to get inside there and follow it all along. With the new sharp knife, you'll have no problems in doing this. Again, you just kind of have to take your time. Right, there's no point me showing all this, but once I get all this cut out, we'll turn the camera back on and we'll show. Right, as we can see, I've got it all done, and it took a long time. Now there maybe is another way. If you completely cover that like I did and don't cut it out and maybe get a little model brush afterwards, you can always colour in the letters, but I kind of figured that out maybe halfway through and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep going. That might be the way I do it next time, to be honest, because that just took a long time. But it's all done now, ready to paint. Right, the paint I'm using, like I said, I'm using this POR 15. I'm using a paint enamel. I'm using the same stuff. I've got a little mixing pot because what I need to do is thin this out. Now this is the stuff for it. You might be able to use thinners, I don't know. I just didn't want to risk it because if this is specially designed for this and I lose the shine because of it. So I'm using their thinners. And it says basically not to go more than 5%. Now there's no way I can spray this, only thinning this down 5%. The spray gun I'm going to use is my undercoat gun, because my undercoat gun's got a bigger nozzle, because my lacquer gun and my paint gun has a smaller nozzle, and this is really thick stuff and I want to lay it on quite thick, so I'm not going to be able to do it with my normal gun. Now I've got a little mixing cup here. I'm just going to go to number 2 because I shouldn't need a lot really. Now it's just over number 2. Actually a tiny bit more now. Just very messy. Now it says not to go more than 5%, so I'm going to do it maybe 10% first, just to see how good or bad it is. I'll know the thickness to see if I can actually paint it. Now it also does say stir, do not shake. So I'm going to stir this and see what we get. Now that still is maybe a bit on the thick side. I'm going to put it in the gun and I'm going to test it first to see if that is going to be okay for me. Now, the way I know from experience with this gun is when I squeeze the trigger, just by the way it comes out, so I know I'm going to be okay with this. Now, depending on your spray gun or your system, obviously you need to know the right pressure. No point me going into all that because it can get very complicated, but I know I'm okay to spray this with that. The key is, if it's too cold, you can lose the shine. If it's too hot, the paint can dry before it hits it, so you have to kind of be clever. I've never sprayed this stuff before, so we're going to see how it goes. I'm going to put maybe 2 or 3 coats on, maybe a bit more, because when you hand paint it, you can put 2 coats on. But when you hand paint it, it's very thick. This is obviously not going to be as thick, but we're going to see. Now I'm going to let that dry. The key is with anything, you don't want to put it on too heavy with any sort of paint, just nice light coats. Hopefully this is going to sit and do what it needs to do, but I won't know until the end. It all kind of looks good. So I'm going to do a few more coats like that. And then once we get it done or close to it, we'll turn the camera back on and see what it looks like. Right, the noise you can hear is the big heater. We have the second coat on this, as you can see. It's getting there, so a couple more coats I reckon and we'll be fine. Once we peel back the masking tape, it's going to look sexy. Okie dokie, there we go, it's all done. Shiny. Now, what I've got to do is kind of the hardest part, is take all the masking tape off. And it's best to do when the paint isn't completely dry, because you can actually start ripping the paint. You need to do when the paint is still green. Not so much wet, but just as it's kind of half drying. So after maybe, depending on the paint, 10-15 minutes, half an hour till your last coat was sprayed. So then we're going to rip off the masking tape and hopefully we're okay. We might have a little bit of touching up to do, so I might not have cut the letters completely right, but we'll soon find out. But we should be 99% there. Now this is the scary part. I've got a sharp knife and I've got to try and attempt to remove the masking tape without hitting the paint, which is a lot easier said than done. So, going to some gloves on so I don't get covered in paint and all sticky, because that can be just as bad. Now, if you're below 18, look away now, because this is going to be X-rated. This is going to be pure sexy. Always nerve-wracking. Just take your time, gentle. Oh, look at that! Now, if you don't like this, there's something wrong with you. Would you look at that? Get closer on that.
I am.
Oh, baby. Now, get in here. Look at that. This is the best part of it, but also a bit nerve-wracking. So, try and get in there. Lift it off. Starting to look like something now. I'm sorry that this is an X-rated video to any parents out there. I do apologise. If you don't like this, there is definitely something wrong here. Just look at that. It's a shame they don't do rocker covers like this anymore. All plastic and boring. It's looking better with every peel off.
Leon's very happy with himself.
Look at that. Now I've kind of hit a little bit of paint on the Ford sign and on the two O's of the Coswoth, but I can sort that out once it's dry. So we just come around here and get that. As you can see, that was actually my fault when I was peeling it off. But I can sort that out. I've got a little bit here and a little bit there, but I can sort that once I once the paint's actually dry. So now, let's try and get this off. Ooh. Just 2 more, and we are done. Now, if you can remember what this used to look like, so be on the beginning of the video. Now, it has took a long time, but I think you'll agree it's been worth it. Oh no! No, we're okay. Oh no! No, we're okay. Now, just look at that. Isn't that just absolutely gorgeous? So let's just take a minute to admire that. Beautiful. So look, hope that helps you. Basically, it is very simple. It's just time consuming. And as you can see, you can send it away to somebody, but what's the point? If you do it, and at the end of it, you can appreciate you've done it, which I just think is a million times better. So hope it helps. Thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget to get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.